When the station rescued the abandoned K9, they thought they were doing him a favor. Malnourished, silent, and unwilling to bond, the shepherd barely responded to touch or command. For weeks, he paced the same corner, staring at a rusted sealed locker no one had touched in years. When they finally forced it open, every conversation, every footstep in that room stopped. What they found changed everything about the town, the department, and the dog. If you're drawn to gripping true crime-style thrillers with emotional punch and slow-burning tension, you're in the right place. Stick around, subscribe if you want more stories like this. It was the third straight week of rain in Belwick County. The kind of rain that turned gravel to soup and slowed patrol cars to a crawl. The department's lone dispatcher, Maria Ellis, leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples as the fluorescent lights buzzed above her. She was about to pour another cup of stale coffee when the call came in. Got a stray shepherd. Just off County 12 near the old rail bridge, said the voice on the line. Jim Harvell, the groundskeeper at the abandoned sawmill. Been out there for days. Not movin'. Just sittin'. I think it's waitin'. Waiting for what? She asked, already half thinking about sending Deputy Klein. There was a pause. Then, you'll see. By the time Deputy Raymond Klein arrived, the sky had gone a deep bruise color. His windshield wipers slapped in a lazy rhythm. He spotted the shepherd before the mill came into full view, soaked to the bone, ribs showing, sitting perfectly still near the chained front gates. Ray stepped out slowly, approaching with his palm open. The dog didn't move. "You're a damn skeleton," Ray murmured. He crouched, looking the shepherd in the eyes. One was cloudy, scarred. The other was sharp amber. Alert. Ray reached out. The shepherd didn't growl. Didn't lick. Just stood up, turned, walked to the back of the patrol SUV and sat beside it. Ray opened the hatch without a word. The station wasn't built for dogs. Belwick PD had 2 holding cells, 1 coffee machine, a cracked ping-pong table, and a locker room half filled with donated gear from the county before it split jurisdiction. They made space for the shepherd in the supply office, laying out an old blanket and a bowl of kibble borrowed from the animal control truck. "He's not eaten," Maria said the next morning. "Just keep staring at the locker." She pointed to the far wall of the locker room. Locker number 9. Old rusting, duct-taped at the bottom. Cops joked it belonged to the ghost of Sergeant Epps, who'd vanished after a manhunt 12 years back. Ray glanced down at the shepherd, still planted in the same spot, eyes locked on the steel door. He frowned. "He hasn't moved. Not an inch. Just circles it sometimes. Then lays back down. It's weird." On day 3 they named him Jax. On day 5 the dreams started. Ray wasn't the type to talk about dreams. He was military before the badge. Served in Fallujah. Dreams were weakness, imagination unpruned. But ever since they brought Jax in, he'd started waking up sweating, heart hammering. Same dream. Every time. He's running through the woods at night, breath tight, flashlight flickering. Someone's calling his name. A woman. Maybe a girl. He sees the shadow of a dog. Maybe Jax, maybe not. Trees blur. There's a metallic screech. Smell blood, rot, wet earth. Then nothing. By the second week, Jax had made his routine known. He'd eat only once a day, never barked, never begged. Never touched his chew toys. But every day, same time. He'd stand, pace in circles around locker number 9 for exactly 90 seconds, then sit again. And every single person in the department noticed it. "I'm telling you that locker smells," said Officer Pete Harrow. "Like rust and something else. Wet wood. Mold." Ray finally snapped. "Fine. We'll open it. Tomorrow." They all stood around the table that night, sipping weak coffee, not saying much. It had been 12 years since Epps went missing. No one ever touched his locker. Not out of respect, out of unease. The next morning Ray arrived early. Jax was already at the locker, staring. When Ray approached with the bolt cutters, the dog growled for the first time. Not loud. Not aggressive. Just a warning. a sound too human in its depth. "Easy, Jax," Ray muttered. "You wanted this." He clipped the padlock. It popped off, hitting the floor with a sharp clink. Jax stopped growling. Ray opened the locker slowly. Then the room fell silent. Inside was no uniform, no boots, no photos. Instead, there was a bundle of small bones, wrapped in what looked like a child's raincoat. A dog tag rested on top, half buried in what was unmistakably dried blood. The air reeked of rot and old grief. Everyone froze. Ray knelt, lifted the coat. There was something underneath. A faded photograph. A girl. Blonde. Freckles. She couldn't have been older than 8. Her name, scribbled on the back. Gracie. The tag said, K9 Boone. Unit number 27, Belwick PD. Jax let out a low, guttural whine and lay down on the cold tile. Ray's hand shook. He looked at Maria, then Pete. No one spoke. In a town that thrived on silence, something had finally screamed. The photograph sat under the flickering light of the interrogation room, untouched. No one wanted to be the first to move it. Ray stared at it from the doorway, arms folded, jaw tight. On the table, the girl's smile stared back. Innocent, unaware, ghost-like. The corner of the photo had curled with age. The raincoat they'd pulled from the locker still sat in an evidence bag beside it, stiff with dried blood. Maria walked in carrying a file, her face pale. "There's no record of a Gracie tied to Boone or Epps. Nothing in our missing persons going back 15 years. She's not in any of the old case files." He asked. "I checked twice. Unless the records were scrubbed or misfiled, she was never reported missing. That doesn't make sense." Ray's eyes flicked to the dog lying by the locker again, watching them through the half-open door. That dog knew she was in there. Or someone wanted him to remember. Boone. The tag still puzzled him. Belwick's last K9 was retired in 2008. Boone. A name the older guys still said with a kind of quiet reverence. If this was Boone's tag, and if the coat belonged to a child, then someone had left remains in a locker for over a decade, locked behind a mystery dog's trauma. But Boone was dead. Or so they were told. Ray looked again at the tag, turning it over. The back was scorched, like it had been in a fire. Jax hadn't moved for hours. He barely blinked. Ray crouched beside him and placed the tag on the floor. The shepherd sniffed it. Then something shifted. His ears perked. His body lifted halfway before he turned and walked toward the hallway. He stopped once, looked over his shoulder. Then he continued walking. Ray stood. "He wants us to follow." Maria raised a brow. "What, like Lassie? Come on. I'm serious." The hallway was dim, echoing with the low hum of the vents. The dog's nails clicked softly on the linoleum as he moved through the back exit. Outside, the storm had given way to a slow mist. A fog rolled in low, and Jax disappeared into it. Ray didn't hesitate. They followed Jax through the woods behind the station, past the training field and over the rusted chain-link fence that marked the department's old perimeter. Beyond that, there was nothing but trees and mud for miles. But Jax moved like he knew exactly where he was going. Maria was panting behind Ray. "You sure this isn't a wild goose chase?" Ray didn't answer. He could feel it, something wrong in the air, like memory soaked into the soil. Eventually they reached a clearing. Dead branches twisted above. In the center stood a broken-down shed, rotted at the base. Ray remembered it faintly, used during training years ago before funding cuts. Jack stopped, scratched once at the door. Ray looked at Maria. "Get your light." The inside was choked with old boxes, tarps, and the stench of mold. Ray ducked under a collapsed beam, waving away the spiderwebs. Then he saw it. Small blue sneaker. Tucked in the corner under a fallen filing cabinet. He froze. The air shifted again, heavy like being watched. Maria knelt, gloved up, and picked it up carefully. "This is child-sized. Same color as the raincoat. There were dark smears on the sole." "Jesus," she whispered. Why was this never cleared out? Ray's stomach churned. Because no one was supposed to find it. Back at the station, the entire building had taken on a tense, unspoken silence. They bagged the sneaker, logged it. Jax lay by the locker again, as if waiting for another door to be opened. That night, Ray dug through the oldest files in the records room. Dust layered everything. Folders stacked by year. Nothing was digital back then. And that's when he found it. A file tucked behind 2008's arrest logs. No name on the tab. Inside, a report. Date: August 4, 2008. Officer: Sergeant Raymond Epps. Subject: Boone, K9. Sudden transfer and behavioral deviation. Ray flipped through the pages. Boone refused field commands during missing child search. Began circling area near Old Hollow Creek. Displayed signs of agitation and stress. Epps requested transfer of Boone to out-of-county facility for reconditioning. There were handwritten notes. Messy, frantic. The girl is still out there. Locker. He keeps going back to the locker. I think I know what happened, but I can't prove it. Not yet. Ray's blood ran cold. Epps didn't vanish. He was silenced. Ray stared at the file until midnight. The words blurred. Boone. Locker. Girl. Missing. All connected. He thought of the way Jax circled. The same behavior. Like a ghost picking at old wounds. And then something even colder struck him. What if Jax wasn't a rescue at all? What if someone sent him back to open this? The next morning, Pete Harrow was missing. His cruiser was parked outside the diner. His radio left on. Coffee still warm on the dash. They searched the entire town. Ray drove the back roads for hours. No trace. But Jax, he paced more that day. Round and round the locker. Faster. And when Ray returned to the station after sundown, Jax was staring at the back door of the evidence room. Waiting. Ray took a deep breath, stepped through the door and froze. The photograph of Gracie was gone. In its place was a new one. Boy. Maybe 10. Eyes blacked out with marker. A tag hanging from his neck. The same dog tag. Ray turned it over. A message was scrawled in red. You were supposed to forget. He didn't. Ray's heart stopped. Then he heard it. Bark. Low. Echoing from the vents. And Jax was gone. The sound didn't come again. Not at first. Just that one bark. Low, distant, and then silence thick as fog. Ray stared at the ceiling vent, frozen. The station was old. Its ductwork a maze of rusted shafts and warped grates. No one had touched the ventilation system in years. He stepped back into the hallway. Jax, he called. Nothing. He moved to the locker room, then the back stairwell. His boots thudded softly on the tile, every sound amplified. The only reply was the creak of an old ceiling fan turning too slow. No dog. No collar jingle. Just absence. Then he turned a corner. And nearly slammed into Maria. You scared the hell out of me, she hissed. He's gone. I know. I checked the front exit cameras. He didn't leave. He's still inside. Ray's jaw tightened. Then he's in the walls. They opened every crawlspace, every duck-sized panel in the back half of the station. Flashlights cut through dust and cobwebs. Rats scattered. Dead moths collected like ash. Why the hell would he go in there? Maria muttered, wrinkling her nose. Ray kept quiet. His gut told him the answer had more to do with instinct than logic. Jax was tracking something. Following a scent that human noses couldn't catch. And whatever it was, it wasn't new. They paused by the boiler room door. The padlock was broken. Fresh scrape marks clawed the frame. Ray's pulse thudded in his ears. He pushed the door open. The heat hit first like stepping into a furnace. The old boiler hissed. Pipes groaned above like metal bones shifting in sleep. And lying in the middle of the concrete floor was the photograph of the boy again. Curled at the corners. The marker now smeared. Beneath it, Jax's collar. Still warm. They called the state police. Said it was a matter of potential evidence tampering. Disappearing K9. Officer gone missing. The moment possible child remains was mentioned, Belwick PD went from ignored to under scrutiny. An evidence team was scheduled to arrive in 2 days. Ray didn't think they had that long. That night Ray stayed behind. Maria went home. The rest of the staff, down to just 3 patrol officers, volunteered to work remote traffic or do desk checks. No one wanted to be in the station. Ray sat in the locker room, staring at number 9. And then, without really thinking, he opened it again. There was something else inside now. Taped to the back wall, behind where the raincoat had been, was a map. County line. River Bend. Old Hollow Creek. Marked with an X. Next to it, a single word. Boone. Ray sat back. If that was where Boone had taken Epps. If that was where the dog had led his handler before disappearing. Maybe it was where this whole thing started. The road out to Hollow Creek hadn't been maintained in years. It coiled through foggy pine, rutted and slick from weeks of rain. Ray drove slow, his headlights picking up the reflective shine of wet leaves and broken signs. At one point, a deer ran across the road. But he swore, just for a second, that behind it was a shadow that moved differently. Whoa. West. Familiar. He hit the brakes, rolled down the window. Jax. Nothing but the hiss of crickets. The X on the map marked a bend in the river. An old hunting cabin stood there, sagging into the soil like it was trying to disappear. Ray parked and walked the last 100 yards. He wasn't alone. The door was slightly ajar. Inside, it smelled like wet earth and long-forgotten secrets. He drew his sidearm, flicked on his flashlight, and found Jax, sitting perfectly still in the center of the room. Beside him, a shallow grave. The soil recently disturbed. Ray approached slowly. What is this? What did you find? Jax didn't move. Ray stepped around the grave and knelt. There was something sticking out. Bluff. He dug with gloved hands. Slowly. Carefully. And then he uncovered it. Second badge. Sergeant Raymond Epps. Still pinned to the shredded remains of a uniform shirt. Bullet holes. Bones beneath. Epps had never disappeared. He'd been buried. Ray sat back against the cabin wall, heart thudding. The cold sweat on his spine had nothing to do with weather. Jax hadn't moved. He simply looked at Ray with those mismatched eyes, like he was waiting for him to put the rest together. Epps found the girl. Or her body. Boone tried to lead him. Someone stopped them both. Covered it up. Killed them. And used dogs, first Boone now Jax, to bury what they couldn't burn. But Boone had resisted. Just like Jax. And somehow Jax had come back. Not for revenge. For justice. Ray whispered into the dark. Who did this to you? Jax finally stood. Turned toward the cabin door. And growled. Not at Ray. At the shadows beyond. The gunshot came before Ray could react. Wood exploded inches from his face. He dove. Another shot ripped through the wall. Jax barked once. Feral, loud, wild. Ray crawled to the window and caught a glimpse of the shooter. Pete Harrow. Dirt Street. Bill. Is vacant. Should have let it stay buried. Pete screamed from the tree line. Jax leapt through the open door and vanished into the dark. Ray followed, heart hammering. Pete fired again, missed. Ray dropped behind a log, trying to catch his breath. Why? He shouted. She was just a kid. She was a mistake. Pete roared. Epps wasn't supposed to find her. Boone led him right to it. Then the bastard wouldn't shut up. Said he was going to the press. Ray's mind reeled. You killed them both. Wasn't just me, Pete snapped. But I'm the one left holding the bag. Another gunshot. This one closer. Ray ducked and heard a growl. Then a yelp. Then silence. When Ray emerged from cover, gun drawn, flashlight sweeping the woods, he found Pete on the ground, breathing, bleeding from the shoulder, and Jax standing over him. The blood on his teeth wasn't Pete's. It was older, darker, like something long dead had passed through him. Ray called it in. Told state police where to find Epps. Where to find the graves. Told them everything almost. He left out the dreams. The barking in the vents. The way Jack seemed to know. No one would believe it anyway. But the last thing he saw before the paramedics took Pete away was Jack circling the base of a pine tree. 90 seconds. Round and round. Then sitting. Staring. Waiting. State investigators arrived with floodlights, shovels, and silence. They pulled 3 bodies from the cabin site over 2 days. Sergeant Raymond Epps, a little girl later confirmed as Gracie Monroe through dental records, and a third skeleton still undergoing analysis. The latter had no ID, no name, no obvious cause of death, just shattered ribs and a cracked skull. They didn't talk much about that one. Ray kept his distance during the exhumations. Instead, he stood by his patrol SUV, watching the woods. Jack sat beside him, still and steady. "He hasn't left your side in 3 days," Maria said, stepping next to him with 2 coffees. "He's not mine." She didn't reply right away. Autopsy confirmed Epps was shot. Close range. Execution style. Ray nodded. He already knew. And Pete Harrow. "He's not talking anymore. Keeps saying the same thing. Wasn't just me. He's terrified of dogs. Refuses to eat if they're in the room." Ray watched Jack's. "So who else?" he asked. Maria hesitated. "You're not going to like the answer." Back at the station, the walls felt thinner. Every creak in the floor, every hum in the lights seemed louder now. The locker room had been sealed for evidence processing. Jax kept pacing the hallway in perfect loops. The others didn't want to be near him. Maria handed Ray a folder. From a file storage center in Braintree. Not digital, microfiche scanned copies from back in 2008. Inside was a record. A dispatch tape, partially transcribed. A woman's voice crying. "My daughter's not home. Her name is Gracie Monroe. She didn't come back from school. Called already. This is the 2nd time." Date: August 3, 2008. The day before Boone was transferred. Ray flipped to the next page. A handwritten note in the margin. "Don't log this. Already resolved. Chief M. Lorman." Ray's blood turned to ice. Chief Mitchell Lorman. The same man still sitting behind the desk upstairs. Retired 6 years ago. Still shows up for photo ops and town meetings. The one who appointed Pete Harrow to his spot on the council. "I didn't know," Maria said. "I swear I wasn't even working here yet." Ray closed the folder. Jax growled low in his throat. They found Lorman at his lake house. Didn't even flinch when they brought out the warrant. He opened the door himself, poured coffee, let them in like they were old friends. "I figured this day would come," he said. Ray stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "You knew about Gracie. I knew Epps was getting in too deep. Boone was just a dog. But Epps, he wouldn't stop. And Pete followed orders. We thought we could shut it all down, move the dog out, scrub the tapes. But Boone kept circling that locker like a goddamn priest at a grave." Lorman smiled then. "Me. Bitter. So we made a decision. You buried a child. She was the sheriff's niece. She wandered into something she wasn't supposed to see. That wasn't supposed to be her fate. But once she knew, there was no unknowing." Ray didn't ask who else he meant by we. He already knew. Jax waited outside the door. When Lorman stepped onto the porch in cuffs, Jax stood, walked up to him and stared. Just stared. Lorman turned pale. "That's not Boone." "No," Ray said. "That's the one Boone sent back." Word spread through Belwick like rot through wood. Quiet, creeping, persistent. 3 resignations. 2 open investigations. The department was gutted. And still Jack stayed. Ray let him sleep in the corner of his home office, laid down an old blanket. The first night he didn't sleep. Neither did Jax. They just sat in their own quiet corners, staring into darkness. The second night Ray dreamed again. Only this time it was different. He was walking through the woods, flashlight in hand. raincoat caught in the brambles. Boone was beside him, panting. And behind Boone, Gracie, alive, smiling, leading them both forward. Ray woke up with tears on his face. The next morning he found Jax sitting by the fireplace, circling something, round and round. Box. Inside a cassette tape. It wasn't in the evidence logs. It hadn't been there the night before. Ray stared at the label. August 4, 2008, locker feed. He popped it into the old player. Static. Then a voice. Boone found something behind number 9. Smells like decomp. I'm not logging this until I know for sure. Someone's watching me. I think it's Harrow. If I don't show up, don't believe the transfer order. Boone didn't fail. He saw what no one wanted to see. The tape ended in a sharp knock. Then a gunshot. Then silence. Ray pressed stop. The machine clicked. Jax laid down and closed his eyes. They buried Boone next to Epps. Once DNA confirmed the third body. A full honors funeral. No reporters. Just a folded flag, a few words, and the quiet bark of the dog who brought them back. Ray stood over the grave long after the others left. You brought it full circle, he murmured. Jax sat beside him. Ill. Heavy with years that didn't show. Boone didn't forget, Ray added. Neither did you. Jax turned his head. For the first time licked Ray's hand. Single slow gesture. Then lay down on the grass. And slept. That night, Ray finally locked the door to the locker room. They wouldn't be needing it anymore. But before he turned off the light, he looked once more at locker number 9. And saw something scratched into the inside of the steel door. Dogs remember what men bury. 2 weeks passed. Autumn rolled into Belwick with frost on the windows and smoke in the chimneys. The town began to settle uneasily. Headlines trickled out into state papers. Belwick PD under review for cold case cover-up. Most didn't make front page. Small towns never do. But inside the station it was different. Everything felt hollowed. Half the desks were empty. The locker room door stayed shut. Even the sound of boots on tile seemed quieter now, like the building itself was ashamed. And still Jax remained. Ray drove more than he needed to. Took extra patrol shifts. Slept less. Dreamed often. Every time the same forest. Same river. Same flash of blonde hair between the trees. StationThe. Boone. Just out of reach. But the strangest thing was how Jax had changed. His circling had stopped. No more pacing, no more vent watching. He'd even sleep curled by Ray's desk. Yet every few nights, Ray would catch him staring at the same corner of the house, where the floor creaked if you stepped just right. Where no vents were, no heat flowed, and no reason existed to look. But Jax always looked, like something was still unfinished. One evening Maria called. Ray, I think you should come see this. He met her behind the old church on Magnolia Street. A construction crew was renovating the basement foundation, turning it into a food pantry. They'd broken through a wall. Found a second sealed room beneath. No doors. No light. Just a dirt floor and rotted beams. But they found bones. Not child-sized. Grown. Well, at least 3 different sets. And pinned on a rusted nail in the wall. Another photograph. Gracie again. But older. Maybe 10. Ray stared at it in silence. That's impossible, Maria whispered. She never made it past 8. That's what the autopsy. She was alive longer than anyone thought, Ray said quietly. Maybe even kept here. Maria looked at him. Do you think this was the real scene? Not the locker. Not the cabin. Ray didn't answer. Because deep down, he knew it wasn't about a scene. It was about the circle. Gracie had never been buried once. She'd been moved. Hidden. Again and again. And every time someone helped do it. That night, Ray pulled every file related to Boone's original deployment logs. And there it was. One single mention, buried in budget paperwork. K9 handler Epps assigned temporary operations under church annex for missing juvenile training scenario. It wasn't a scenario. It was a cover. They used Boone to search for Gracie, while keeping her close, kept under their feet, beneath the house of worship. Ray felt sick. He didn't tell the news, didn't call the investigators right away. He went to the church alone. Just after midnight, Jax came too without needing to be told. They stood together in the dirt chamber, flashlight casting long shadows. The air smelled of mildew, blood, and something much older, like secrets left too long in dark places. Ray walked to the wall where the photo had been. Below it, scratched in jagged lines into the brick. "I'm still here." He turned to Jax. "Boone knew." "You knew." Jax lay down in the dirt, head low. "He's tired." Ray knelt beside him. "It's over," he whispered. But he wasn't sure if he believed it. The next morning Jax was gone. No broken windows, no open doors, just a single paw print, dusty, near the base of locker number 9. Ray stood there for a long time. Then he opened the locker one last time. Me. Except for a folded photograph. Boone. Young. Proud. Sitting beside a small girl in a yellow raincoat. Gracie. And beneath it, one more note. He was never looking for revenge. Just a place to rest. The station shut down for renovation that winter. Budget cuts, public pressure, and lawsuits choked the building until it was declared obsolete. Ray left Belwick shortly after. But he kept Boone's tag on his keyring. And some nights, far from home, parked beside lonely stretches of highway or in the stillness of his cabin porch, he'd hear it. That bark. Low. Patient. Waiting. Spring came late to the northern edge of the county. Snowmelt soaked the roads, turning gravel into slush and tree limbs into black, dripping fingers clawing at the wind. Ray hadn't spoken to anyone from Belwick in over a month. He'd put in for early retirement, moved east into the hills, bought a small fixer-upper with a view of nothing but pines. No traffic, no news vans, no reminders, except the dog tag on his nightstand. And the dreams. Every night the same path. The girl's laughter echoing just ahead. The forest swallowing her up before Boone or Jax could reach her. And every time Ray woke gasping, hand clenched into a fist around nothing. Until one morning he didn't wake alone. The sound came just before sunrise. A soft, dragging scratch against the front door. Ray reached for his sidearm on instinct, padded barefoot to the entryway. The house was still. No power yet, no heat, just the creak of wood and his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. He opened the door. Nothing but fog. And one set of paw prints in the dirt. Too large to be a coyote. Too familiar to be anyone else. But no dog stood there. Just the tracks, leading away into the woods. Ray stood there for a long time. Then went back inside, pulled on boots, a coat, and followed. The trail wove through the trees like memory. It led him down a narrow path that hadn't been cleared in decades. Over rotting bridges. Through patches of birch that clicked like bones in the wind. He walked for nearly an hour. No sound but the crunch of frost underfoot. Then he saw it. Small clearing. Pile of stones. A cross, handmade from bent wire and wood. Tag. Boone's. Hung gently on a nail driven into the top. Beside it, a fresh print, still warm in the dirt. Ray dropped to one knee, and understood. This was where Boone had died. Not the cabin, not some state-run training site. Here, quiet, far away from the lies, where no one could turn him into a tool again. Ray sat there all morning. The air smelled clean. He didn't cry. Not like he thought he would. Because for the first time there were no questions left. No bodies to dig. No loops to pace. Just the grave of a dog who'd never stopped searching. Who'd returned somehow in another form. Another chance. To finish what he started. To be heard. And to make the silence listen. Ray built a second cross beside Boone's. Simple. Cedar. No words. He took the tag off his keyring and buried it under the stones. Not to forget, but to let go. As he stood, the wind shifted. A bark echoed faintly through the trees. Not desperate. Not lost. Just present. Ray turned to follow it. But this time the woods stayed still. And for once he let them. Months passed. Ray stayed off-grid. No badge. No press calls. Just wood to chop, ground to plant, trails to walk. Sometimes he'd see prints in the snow. Or a shadow near the tree line. But it wasn't haunting anymore. It was memory. It was grace. Back in Belwick, they finally tore the station down. Developers bought the land for a housing project. Maria called one last time. They bulldozed the locker room, she said. Guess what was underneath? Ray didn't speak. A box, she continued. Wooden. Sealed in concrete. Inside were more photographs. More names. Kids never logged. Dogs never registered. They don't know how deep it goes yet. Ray rubbed his eyes. And what'll they do with it? Probably bury it in paperwork, she said. Then let the dogs find it again. In the final days of that summer, Ray wrote something in a leather journal and left it on his porch in the open air. It read, "He wasn't just circling the locker. He was circling our conscience. Dogs don't forget. They wait." He closed the book. And finally slept without dreaming.